My name is Megan Carter. I'm 30 years old, and if you asked me to pick the moment when my life split in two before and after, it would be my dad's 60th birthday party. It was supposed to be a night of laughter of family gathered in the house where I grew up, glasses clinking, candles glowing, and the comfortable smell of Mom's roast wafting through the air. For a few fleeting hours, I wanted to feel like a daughter again, not a businesswoman, not a dreamer chasing an uncertain future, just a daughter celebrating her father. But betrayal doesn't warn you when it comes. It hides in familiar voices and people you thought you could trust, and it strikes in the middle of the laughter. I remember it so clearly. My fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the china plate, the sound slicing through the chatter around the table. Dad had just leaned forward, his eyes steady on mine, and asked the question that would unravel everything. Megan, the 200,000 I gave you, what did you do with it? At first I thought I had misheard. The blood drained from my face, and for a moment the world went silent, as if even the walls of the dining room leaned closer to hear my answer. My lips parted, but no sound came. My heart beat against my ribs like it was trying to break free. 100,000, what 200,000? I stammered out a reply, my voice small and shaky. What do you mean? And that's when I saw her. My sister Kristen. Her face turned pale as paper, her hands trembling in her lap. Her eyes darted between me and Dad like a rabbit caught in the open, nowhere to hide. And in that moment, a memory rose in my mind. Her strange phone call, just days before her insistence that Dad's birthday party had been canceled, that he was too sick to celebrate, that I shouldn't bother flying home. I had almost believed her, almost, but something about her tone had felt wrong, forced like a rehearsed line in a bad play. So I ignored her warning. I booked my ticket, bought a gift, and walked into the party anyway. And now, sitting across from my father with all eyes on me, I understood why she had wanted me gone. Because Dad believed he had given me money I never saw. Money Kristen must have known about. Money that somehow vanished before it ever reached me. As the silence deepened, I felt the walls closing in. Betrayal, when it comes from strangers, you can shrug off. But when it comes from your own blood, it cuts straight through the bone. A few months earlier, my life had been full of hope. I was living in Chicago, working as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized fashion brand. The hours were long, the deadlines relentless, but I loved it, the rush of pitching campaigns, the thrill of seeing my ideas come to life on glossy billboards. Still, my dream had always been bigger. I wanted my own boutique. A place with my name on the window racks of clothes. I designed myself a space that felt alive with my vision. And then Dad made that dream feel real. He wired me $800,000, no strings attached. His words still echoed in my ears. This is your chance, Megan. Build something of your own. I believe in you. That money wasn't just numbers in a bank account. It was love. It was faith. It was the bridge between who I was and who I could become. I spent nights scrolling through Salt Lake City real estate listings, my heart racing at the thought of coming home to start fresh. But then Kristen called. She claimed the party was canceled, that Dad wasn't well. Her words had tied knots in my stomach, but I ignored them. I packed my bag anyway. And thank God I did. Because when I arrived in Sugar House, Dad's house was lit up with music and laughter, cars parked up and down the street, the exact opposite of the lie she fed me. That lie now burned in my chest as I sat frozen at the table facing my father's piercing gaze. The room was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. Dad's question lingered in the air like a storm cloud, dark and heavy. The 200,000 I gave you. What did you do with it? I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I had no idea what he was talking about. The only money I had ever received was the 800,000 for my boutique. Before I could form another word, Kristen's voice broke in, high-pitched and brittle. She probably just forgot Dad. You know how busy she is in Chicago? Forgot. My head snapped toward her. The audacity of it. $200,000 isn't something you just forget. Her hands twisted nervously, her laugh forced her face drained of color. And in that instant I knew. She wasn't covering for me, she was covering for herself. Dad's eyes narrowed, his voice cut through her excuse like a blade. Kristen, I asked Megan. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. My mom's face was rigid, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her wine glass. Aunt Ellen stood in the corner, her eyes sharp, watching everything like a hawk. She had always been the one who saw through the smoke and mirrors in our family. My pulse roared in my ears as I forced the words out. Dad? I don't know about any 200,000. I only ever got the 800,000, I swear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kristen's face went white, and Dad's jaw clenched as his eyes flicked between us. Then came the blow that shattered what little was left of my trust. Dad explained, his voice steady but thick with disappointment. He had given each of us $200,000, me and Kristen separate from the boutique money. A gift for our futures. No strings, no questions asked. But I never received mine. My heart dropped into my stomach as realization sank in. Kristen had taken it. She had taken my 200,000 and spent it like it was her birthright. She tried to cover her tracks with flimsy excuses, bank errors, mix-ups, misunderstandings. But her voice shook, her eyes darted, and every word rang hollow. Then Mom stepped forward. My mother. The woman who raised me, who should have defended me, who should have been my shield. She placed a steadying hand on Kristen's arm, silent, her lips pressed tight. That silence told me everything. She had known. She had been part of it. The room collapsed around me. Guests shifted uncomfortably, their whispers buzzing like gnats. Some slipped quietly toward the door, unwilling to watch the unraveling of a family they had always thought was perfect. My father's face hardened into something I had never seen before. Betrayal carved deep lines into his features. His voice was sharp, final. You thought you could take what wasn't yours, Kristen. And you, Linda. He spat my mother's name with venom. You let this happen. My sister's lips trembled as tears filled her eyes. I thought it was mine. I didn't mean, but Dad's hand slammed down on the table, rattling glasses and plates. You thought his roar silenced her, silenced everyone. I sat there, my chest heaving, anger and grief warring inside me. All those years, Kristen's designer bags, her trips to Europe, her smug little smiles when I struggled to make ends meet. It had been my money funding her lies, and my mother had stood by and let it happen. My voice broke as I turned to her. Mom, did you know? She flinched but said nothing. Her silence was the sharpest betrayal of all. Dad's jaw was set like stone as he pulled out his phone, his fingers steady, his decision final. I'm calling the police. Kristen collapsed into sobs, grabbing at his arm. Dad, please don't. Mom's voice rose frantic, desperate. Daniel, stop. We can fix this. We're family. But Dad shook her off. His eyes were ice. Family doesn't betray family. You're done. And in that moment, I knew my family as I had always known it was gone. The police station was cold, its walls a harsh gray that seemed to seep into my bones. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, washing everything in a sterile glow. Just hours earlier, I had been in my childhood home, surrounded by laughter and cake, only to watch the entire foundation of my family splinter apart before my eyes. And now, here I was, sitting in a plastic chair in a waiting area that smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, my hands clenched so tightly they ached. Dad stood nearby, his posture rigid, his face unreadable. Aunt Ellen sat beside me, flipping through a folder she'd carried from her car, her evidence, as she called it. Receipts, notes, things she had quietly collected over weeks of suspicion. She had always been like that, sharp-eyed and unwilling to look away when others ignored the truth. Through the glass of the one-way window, I could see Kristen sitting at a metal table, her head bowed, her hands fidgeting in her lap. The girl who once strutted around in designer heels and posted sun-drenched photos from Paris was gone, replaced by someone small, someone fragile, someone caught. In another room sat my mother, Linda Carter. Her shoulders hunched, her face lined with exhaustion. She looked less like the woman who raised me and more like a stranger who had stolen her skin. An officer stepped into the room, his shoes clicking against the linoleum. His voice was calm but carried weight. Miss Carter, we've taken statements from both your sister and your mother. You'll want to hear this. My stomach turned. I wasn't ready. Part of me wanted to run from the truth, to pretend this was all a nightmare that would fade with the sunrise. But the other part, the part that had endured years of being second best to Kristen, the part that had clawed and fought for every scrap of independence, needed to know. The officer led us into the observation room. His words cut through the air like glass. Kristen admitted to accessing a joint account your father set up. It held funds for you and your sister, 200,000 each. She withdrew your share a few weeks ago, claiming she thought it was hers. I felt the breath leave my lungs. A few weeks ago. That explained everything: the new designer bags, the sudden trip to Milan, the expensive dinner she had plastered all over her Instagram stories. My money, my future, burned up in a blaze of vanity. She said she needed to cover personal expenses, the officer continued. High-end clothes, travel, hotel stays. There's maybe 10,000 left in her accounts. 10,000 out of 200,000. I felt something twist violently inside me. Rage, grief, disbelief, all tangled together. I thought of all the nights I had worked late in Chicago, saving every spare dollar for the boutique I dreamed of. And while I was grinding myself into exhaustion, Kristen was blowing through my inheritance like it was confetti at one of her endless parties. What about my mom? My voice cracked as I forced the question out. The officer flipped through his notes. She admitted she knew. She gave Kristen access to the account, assuming they could replace the money before anyone noticed. Replace it. My fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. Replace $200,000 as if it were pocket change. As if my future was just a loan they could repay whenever it was convenient. Beside me, Dad's jaw tightened. He muttered under his breath. They had no right. His voice was low, raw, filled with something I had never heard before: utter disgust. Aunt Ellen opened her folder, sliding papers across the table toward the officer. I've got proof. Receipts, dates, photos. I saw her at the mall last month dropping thousands like it was nothing. Chanel, Rolex, first-class tickets. The officer skimmed the documents, nodding grimly. This matches her statement. No attempt to cover it up. She spent the money openly. I stared through the glass at Kristen, at the way her shoulders shook as she cried into her hands. And in the other room, my mother sat with her head bowed, silent, defeated. I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even triumph, but all I felt was hollow. The officer's tone shifted. This qualifies as felony theft, second degree in Utah. Maximum sentence is 15 years plus restitution. He paused, his eyes softening as he looked at me. They'll be ordered to pay you back, but with most of the money already spent, recovery will be difficult. Seized assets won't cover the full amount. Dad didn't hesitate. His voice was firm, final. I want them prosecuted. They betrayed my daughter. I won't let it slide. The officer nodded and made a note. We'll move forward with charges. They'll remain here tonight. We'll need your statement tomorrow. His words settled over me like a heavy cloak. My mother and sister were criminals in the eyes of the law. And the ones who had called themselves my family had treated my future like a toy to be broken. The weeks that followed blurred together. Court hearings, endless paperwork, whispers from neighbors who had once admired my mother's elegance and Kristen's charm. Now they crossed the street to avoid them. Dad called me into his study one evening. The air was thick with finality, the kind of silence that told me everything was about to change. Beside him sat Susan Pierce, his lawyer, her briefcase open, papers spread neatly across the desk. Dad's eyes met mine, steady, unyielding. I've rewritten my will. The house, the investments, everything goes to you. Kristen and your mother get nothing. I felt the words strike like stones. A fortune, yes, but at what cost? Dad, my voice was a whisper. Are you sure? His jaw tightened. They don't deserve my trust. You do. Susan slid the revised will across the desk. My name in crisp print, the sole beneficiary. My inheritance had doubled overnight, but instead of joy, I felt grief. It was the price of betrayal etched into legal ink. Later, Susan explained the outcome of the case. Kristen and Mom had been charged with felony theft. 36 months probation each. Ordered restitution $200,000 to me, plus fines of $8,000 each. But the truth was cruel. The money was gone. Kristen had sold her car, a nearly new Mercedes, and pawned off her designer treasures for about $40,000. Mom scraped together another 10, $50,000 in total, a fraction of what was owed. The court set up a repayment plan, monthly installments based on income, but they were broke, stripped of their social standing and jobs. Kristen worked shifts in retail waiting tables at night. Mom took a part-time clerical position, her days of country clubs and luncheons long gone. I should have felt justice, but all I felt was emptiness. Time passed, slowly, painfully, like a wound healing too slowly to stop the scar. I moved into Dad's house in Sugar House, though calling it mine still felt strange. Aunt Ellen helped me settle in, her presence a steady anchor. She kept reminding me, "You're stronger than this, Megan. You'll build something new." And she was right. Months later, I stood in downtown Salt Lake City, staring up at the glass windows of my new boutique, Carter's Charm, my boutique. Dresses and accessories glowed beneath the display lights, each one a piece of my dream finally come alive. The 800,000 Dad had given me wasn't squandered. I poured every ounce of it into this store, into creating something beautiful out of the wreckage. By the 6th month, we were breaking even. By the 9th, we were thriving. Local magazines called my boutique the city's new gem. Customers returned again and again, not just for the clothes, but for the warmth, the story behind it. And still the ghosts lingered. Kristen and Mom lived quietly on the outskirts of town, their probation chaining them to a life they could no longer escape. I heard whispers of their struggles, missed payments, eviction notices, pawn shops. They were paying the price of their choices, one humiliating step at a time. Sometimes I wondered if I should feel pity. But when I remembered the hollow look in Dad's eyes that night, the crack in his voice when he said, "Family doesn't betray family," I knew pity had no place here. I had rebuilt something stronger. Not perfect, not whole, but real. Dad, Aunt Ellen, and me, our small family bound by truth instead of lies. And as I locked up Carter's Charm one quiet evening, the city humming outside, I finally let myself breathe. Greed destroys, but honesty, even when it cuts like a knife, endures. When I first opened Carter's Charm, my boutique downtown, I thought the new beginning would heal me. I thought that if I poured enough of myself into the glossy floors, the gold-trimmed mirrors, the curated racks of clothing, maybe the ache of betrayal would fade. But grief is sneaky. It lingers in the quiet, in the spaces you least expect, and it gnawed at me even as customers smiled, even as fashion bloggers praised my store. There were mornings when I'd unlock the front door, the key trembling in my hand, and I'd hear Kristen's laugh echoing in my mind, the laugh she used when she wanted to remind me I was the practical sister, the one who never sparkled enough. There were nights when I'd lay in bed in Dad's house, my house now, and I'd smell Mom's perfume on the hallway rug, a scent that clung like a ghost. I would close my eyes and wonder, how could a mother choose silence over her daughter? The boutique became my refuge. I threw myself into it with a kind of desperation, working 12-hour days, sketching designs late into the night, running to fabric suppliers at dawn. Each dress I hung on the rack felt like a tiny rebellion, a declaration that they hadn't broken me. Customers would step into the shop, their faces lighting up as they tried on the pieces I had handpicked, and for those moments I felt almost whole. But then the letters started arriving, small cream-colored envelopes with Kristen's handwriting. She must have learned the hard way that probation and restitution didn't wipe away guilt. She wrote about her struggles, about the shifts she worked until her feet blistered, about the shame of neighbors whispering. She wrote that she was sorry, that she hadn't meant to take my future away, that she wished she could undo it all. I left the first one unopened on the kitchen counter. By the third, I started reading, and by the fifth, I cried. Her words dripped with desperation, but I couldn't tell if they were honest or just another performance. I thought it was mine. That excuse still rang in my ears, the audacity, the cruelty. I couldn't forgive her, not yet, but I also couldn't stop my heart from aching at the sight of her brokenness. Mom wrote too. Her letters were shorter, colder. She justified, she explained. I was protecting her. "You've always been strong, Megan. Kristen needed me more." That line cut deeper than any blade. She had chosen my sister's weakness over my strength. She had gambled my future because she believed I would survive the blow. And maybe she was right, I did survive, but survival isn't the same as living. Dad tried to shield me from it all. He spent his mornings gardening, his afternoons dropping by my store with coffee and jokes that were always more groan-worthy than funny. At night, we'd eat dinner together, just the two of us, and sometimes Aunt Ellen, who had become my fiercest ally. One evening after a long day, Dad sat across from me at the dining table. His eyes softened in the glow of the chandelier. "I know you still carry it," he said. "The hurt, the betrayal. Don't let it harden you." I stared at him, my fork hovering over my plate. How do you forgive Dad, after everything they stole from me, from us, and Mom? She stood there and said nothing. His face tightened, grief etched into the lines around his eyes. Forgiveness isn't for them, Megan. It's for you. It's so you can sleep at night without their shadows crawling into your dreams. I wanted to believe him, but the wound was too fresh, the scars still raw. Months passed. Carter's charm blossomed, gaining traction faster than I could have dreamed. By our first anniversary, we were hosting events, fashion shows, collaborations with local designers. A magazine feature called me Salt Lake's Rising Star, and for the first time I allowed myself a quiet smile of pride. But success carried its own weight. Behind the curtain of my boutique, I was still that daughter sitting at the dining room table, blindsided by her father's question, gutted by her sister's theft, shattered by her mother's silence. The past clung to me like a second skin, and then one cold December evening, the past walked back through the door. I was closing up the boutique when the bell above the entrance chimed. I looked up and my breath caught. Kristen. She looked nothing like the sister I remembered. Her once polished hair hung limp, her makeup smeared with exhaustion. She wore a plain jacket, her nails chipped, her eyes red. For a moment I didn't recognize her. Megan, she whispered, her voice breaking. Please, just hear me out. Every muscle in my body tensed. The walls of the boutique seemed to close in. I wanted to scream, to throw her out, to demand how she dared step foot in my store after what she had done. But instead, I stood frozen, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles went white. I've been trying, she said, her words tumbling out. The restitution, the work, I'm doing everything I can. But it's not enough. I know I can never fix what I broke. I wanted you to see me like this. Not the sister who stole from you, just your sister. Broken. Sorry. Tears pricked my eyes, but anger surged hotter. You didn't just steal money, Kristen. You stole my trust, my peace, my family. Her lips trembled. I know. And then she left. Just like that. No demands, no excuses, just her small broken frame disappearing into the cold night. I sank onto the floor behind the counter, shaking, the tears spilling freely. I hated her for what she'd done. But God help me, I hated myself more for still loving her despite it. Christmas that year was quiet. Dad, Aunt Ellen, and I gathered in the house, exchanging gifts by the fire. The empty chairs screamed louder than any carols. I tried to smile, but my heart was heavy. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside. You don't have to let them back in, Megan, he said gently. But you also don't have to carry them like chains around your neck. I nodded, but I didn't answer, because I didn't know how. As the seasons changed, I found myself staring more often at the skyline of Salt Lake City from the boutique's window. The mountains stood tall, unyielding, as if reminding me that storms pass, but strength remains. Kristen and Mom still sent letters, though less frequently. Some I read, some I burned. Forgiveness was a horizon I could see but never quite reach. What I did know was this: I would not let their betrayal define me. My store, my life, my choices, they were mine. But late at night, when the city fell silent and the boutique's lights dimmed, I would whisper into the darkness, why wasn't I enough for them to protect? The question had no answer, and maybe it never would. The following months, after Kristen showed up at my boutique, felt like I was living inside two worlds. By day, Carter's charm thrived. Customers walked in with eager eyes, influencers tagged my store on social media, and my designs began appearing at small local galas and even a charity event downtown. But by night, when I was left alone with silence, I could still hear my sister's voice, the crack in it, the rawness. Not the sister who stole from you, just your sister. Broken. Sorry. I replayed that moment countless times, wondering if it was real or just another one of her performances. Kristen had always been good at slipping into masks, confident, glamorous, adored. But the woman who stood trembling in my store had been stripped bare. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe she could change. Yet trust once shattered is not easily rebuilt. Dad noticed the heaviness in me. He was sharper than he let on. One evening, while we sat on the back porch of the Sugar House home watching the sunset bleed orange and pink across the Wasatch Mountains, he spoke without looking at me. She came to see you, didn't she? I froze the glass of wine in my hand halfway to my lips. How did you know? He sighed, his face bathed in fading sunlight. I know my daughters. Kristen is too proud to stay hidden forever. And you've been quieter. You only get quiet when you're carrying something heavy. Tears stung my eyes. She looked destroyed, Dad, not like Kristen at all. And she said she was sorry. He turned to me, then his gaze heavy but kind. Sorry doesn't change the choices she made. It doesn't return what she took. But it might mean she's learning what those choices cost her. I wanted to ask him if he could ever forgive her, if he could ever forgive Mom. But the words stuck in my throat. Maybe because I already knew the answer. Life, though, has a cruel way of circling back. A year into my boutique's success, I received a phone call that nearly undid me again. It was from a lawyer, not Susan, my dad's attorney, but a new one representing Mom. Ms. Carter, he began, his tone clipped and professional. Your mother is filing a petition to contest the revised will. The room tilted. Contest the will. The one Dad had rewritten after the betrayal. The one that left everything to me. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. She has no right, I whispered. She's claiming undue influence, he continued. That Daniel Carter was not of sound mind when he made the changes, that you pressured him. The air left my lungs. My own mother was accusing me of manipulating my father, of exploiting him, of stealing what she and Kristen believed was theirs. I felt something dark rise inside me, a rage deeper than anything I had known at the party that night. The betrayal wasn't over, it had only changed shape. When I told Dad, his face went pale, then hardened into fury. She's desperate, he said. She knows she lost and she can't live with it. But let her try. I'll stand in any courtroom and swear to the truth. Still, the petition shook me. It meant more hearings, more public humiliation, more dredging up of wounds I had been trying to let scar. Aunt Ellen stepped in again, her presence as steady as ever. This isn't about money anymore, she said, her voice sharp as a blade. Linda is trying to rewrite history because she can't face what she did. Don't let her drag you into her fantasy. I nodded, but inside I was breaking all over again. The court date arrived on a gray morning that seemed to echo my mood. I walked into the courthouse with Dad and Aunt Ellen by my side. Kristen was there too, sitting beside Mom, her face pale and drawn. For the first time, she didn't look defiant. She looked ashamed. Mom, on the other hand, was steel. Dressed in a conservative suit, her hair pulled back tightly. She kept her chin raised, her eyes forward. She wouldn't look at me. When the judge asked her to speak, she painted me as a manipulator. She said I had poisoned Dad against her, and Kristen that I had played the victim to secure his wealth. Each word was like acid poured into an already festering wound. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout that she had stood in that dining room silent while Kristen stole from me, silent, while Dad's voice cracked with betrayal. But I held my tongue. Because I knew the truth didn't need to be screamed, it needed to be shown. When Dad took the stand, his voice was steady, his eyes unwavering. No one pressured me, he said. No one manipulated me. I saw my wife and one of my daughters steal from the other. And I made a choice. My estate belongs to Megan because she is the only one who earned my trust. The room went silent. For a moment I thought I saw Mom flinch. The judge dismissed her petition, just like that. But there was no victory in it for me. As we left the courthouse, I looked back at Mom. She sat with her head bowed, her shoulders slumped, her once proud figure now diminished. And I felt something worse than anger. I felt grief. Grief for the mother I had lost long before that day. After the case, things shifted again. Kristen stopped writing. The letters ceased as if she had finally accepted that there was no way back. Mom, however, sent one last message, a single sheet of paper with only 5 words scrawled across it. You'll regret choosing him. I didn't reply, but the words haunted me. Not because I believed them, but because they revealed how far gone she truly was. Dad, though, only grew closer to me. He spent more time at the boutique, helping with the books, giving me advice, even sweeping the floors when I was too busy. He laughed more too, something I hadn't heard much of since I was a child. One evening, as we sat outside the boutique, watching the city lights glow, he turned to me and said, "You saved me, Megan. You gave me a reason to keep fighting, don't ever doubt that." I squeezed his hand, my chest tight with love and sorrow. Because deep down I knew I hadn't saved him. We had saved each other. Yet even with Dad by my side, the scars remained. They showed themselves in small ways. I struggled to trust new friends, always questioning their intentions. I found it hard to let anyone close romantically, flinching at the thought of being vulnerable again. Every betrayal, big or small, reminded me of the night my family fell apart. But maybe those scars were also my strength. They reminded me that I had survived the unthinkable, that I had turned ashes into something living, breathing, thriving. One night as I locked up the boutique, I looked at the sign above the door, Carter's Charm. My name, my dream, my life. And I realized something. My story wasn't about the 200,000 stolen from me, or even the 800,000 that built my store. It was about what I chose to do after betrayal left me bleeding. I chose to rise. When the dust finally settled, when the court battles ended, and the letters stopped arriving, I was left with a silence so thick it pressed against my chest. It was in that silence that I came to understand what betrayal truly does. It doesn't just break the moment, it reshapes every corner of your life. There were nights I would lie awake in Dad's house, my house now, and feel the ache of absence. Mom's perfume still clung faintly to the upstairs hallway rug. Kristen's laughter still echoed in the walls. Their ghosts weren't gone. They lingered not out of love, but out of unfinished hurt. And sometimes I caught myself remembering the small, tender things: Mom brushing my hair before school, Kristen sneaking into my room as a child when thunder scared her. Those memories twisted like knives because they reminded me of what we once were, what we could never be again. But alongside that grief, something new began to bloom. Strength. A quiet kind of resilience that surprised me when I caught glimpses of it in the mirror. I saw it in the way I greeted customers with warmth, even when my chest ached. I saw it in the way I balanced books late at night without collapsing from the pressure. And most of all, I saw it in the way I could sit across from Dad at dinner, and though both of us were scarred, we were still standing. The boutique became more than a store. It became a vessel for my healing. Customers often came in with their own stories: women who had left marriages lost, parents faced betrayals of their own. Somehow, in the soft light of Carter's Charm, they would talk. They'd tell me about their wounds, and in return, I'd share a little of mine. It became less about selling dresses and more about weaving together broken threads into something whole. One afternoon, a young woman about my age lingered by the counter. She held a simple black dress, her eyes full of unshed tears. "It's for my mother's funeral," she whispered. I stepped around the counter, touched her arm, and for a moment we just stood together in silence. In her grief, I saw myself, and in comforting her, I felt a piece of my own healing. It struck me then, maybe this was the real gift my father had given me. Not just the money, not just the store, but the chance to build a place where brokenness could be met with compassion. Kristen and Mom faded further from my life with each passing month. The restitution trickled in small amounts that barely made a dent in what they owed, but I stopped checking the numbers. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the truth. And the truth was, they had chosen lies, and I had chosen honesty. I heard whispers sometimes. A friend of a friend saw Kristen bussing tables at a restaurant downtown. Someone else mentioned Mom volunteering at a church, perhaps trying to rebuild some semblance of reputation. Part of me wanted to go to them to see for myself. But another part, the wiser part, knew that some doors are better left closed. Dad, though, never wavered. His loyalty to me never faltered, even as age began to weigh heavier on him. I often found him in the garden hands, deep in soil, humming old country songs. Sometimes he'd bring me coffee at the boutique and sit by the window watching people go by. "You've made something beautiful out of all this, Megan," he'd say, and I'd feel tears prick my eyes because I knew he was right. Aunt Ellen remained my anchor too. She teased me for working too hard, dragged me out to dinners when I tried to bury myself in work, and reminded me that family doesn't have to be bound by blood, it's bound by choice. And then one evening it all came full circle. I was closing up Carter's Charm when a little girl tugged at the locked door, her mother behind her. I smiled, unlocking it. "We're just about to close, but come on in." The mother explained that her daughter had been saving up her allowance to buy something special, her very first dress from a boutique. She wanted to feel grown up, confident, seen. I knelt beside the girl, helped her pick out a soft lavender dress that shimmered under the lights. When she twirled in it, her face glowing, something inside me cracked open. I remembered being that girl once, dreaming, hoping. And for a moment, I felt a rush of gratitude so fierce it brought tears to my eyes. This was what I had built. This was what they couldn't steal from me. Years from now, maybe the pain of what my mother and sister did will dull into nothing more than a distant scar. But the lesson will never fade. Betrayal taught me the sharpest truths, that greed can rot even the closest bonds, that silence can wound as deeply as words, and that sometimes family is not who you're born to, but who stands beside you when the storm hits. But it also taught me something else, something far more valuable. That strength doesn't come from never being broken. It comes from choosing to rise after you've been shattered. So if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, if you've ever felt your world collapse because the people you trusted the most took a knife to your back, know this. You can survive it. You can build something beautiful from the ruins. I did. And now I look at Carter's charm glowing against the Salt Lake City skyline, at the life I've created, and I whisper to myself, this is mine. This is who I am. Not because of them, but in spite of them. If my story moved you, if you've carried your own scars of betrayal, I want to hear it. Share your story in the comments, your voice matters here. And if you found even a glimmer of strength in my journey, please like this video. Subscribe for more stories like mine and share it with someone who might need the reminder that even